background to a study is such that you start from the general understanding of the concepts that you are dealing with. I see people sometimes try to talk about definitions. Definition has its own space in chapter 2 and under scope of the study. So your concentration in chapter 1 and the background of the study is to give a general overview of what that concept is and how it is conceived around the world. This is a study on cultural, religious orientation of leaders in the organization. You see the état. This état is supposed to be italicized throughout your work. Wherever you use it, it's supposed to be italicized. Then the citation that you see here with the full stop and the comma is APA. So you see that all citations now have comma. That is APA. If you don't want to introduce comma, that is Harvard, which is what KNUST actually requires. Just that graduate school has been very lenient because it appears as if more people are comfortable with the APA than with the Harvard. What we expect is that whichever you will use, you should be consistent. If you are using APA as in this particular presentation, you see that it is consistent. The AL of the état comes with a natural full stop. So wherever you use it, that full stop must be there. That full stop must be there. For those of you conversant with the use of ChatGPT, it is the background of the study that ChatGPT can help you to present. What you should remember is that whatever it gives you now, there is a Turnitin. The Turnitin has been upgraded to be able to know work that has been presented by ChatGPT. Rewrite it. So I expect the background to your study to be a maximum 3 pages. Maximum 3 pages. Minimum 1 page. If you are an MPhil student, your minimum should be 3 pages. Maximum 5 pages. So if you are an MSc student, 1 page, 1.5 pages, 2 pages, 2.5, maximum 3, you are done. Don't let your background to the study go beyond 3 pages. And it should be the general state of the issue. You start from the world, understanding of the world, then you narrow it to the context that you are studying. For some of you, the context is geographical, so Ghana. Some of you, the context is economy, so developing country. Some of you, the context is industrial, so you are looking at health sector. You are looking at mining industry. You are looking at manufacturing industry. So the context is industrial. For some of you, the context is population. So you are studying a particular people. Whatever your context may be, you start from the general and then you take it down to, so you see that this one started talking about culture of organization and the society, and then globalization aided by technology is reducing the size of the worldview. This one you are looking at is for a PhD, and so the background is long. But just look at the citation. You will see that why état, you see the état is italicized. Now, when a citation comes at the beginning of the paragraph, this is how it is presented. don't put the entire citation in brackets. No, it is only the year of publication that is in brackets. So if a citation comes at the beginning of the paragraph or the beginning of a sentence, as in this case, look at this one. This is also the beginning of a sentence. So you see that it is only the year of publication that is in brackets. When you say according to, it will be the same, just that the comma comes after the second bracket. The comma does not come before. So it will not be Akata and Sumi, comma 204. No, it will not be like that. If you say according to Akata and Sumi, it will be 204 in bracket, comma. Please take note of that. I'm saying all this because when you present your final work, I don't want to be bogged down correcting presentation issues, because then you lose sight of actual content. So this is the one example of what I was talking. You see, according to Laue and Berg, you see where the comma is. That is how you should present it. Now, you see people providing citations with page numbers and no quotation. Look at this one. You see that this citation, in the words of Getz, this is Getz Ofsted, page 90, is because this is a direct quote from Getz. It's a direct quote. That is why the page number is there. If you are not using a page number, do not provide the page. If you are not quoting directly, do not provide any page number. It will suggest that you don't know what citation is all about. If you look at this work so far, you don't see, according to Fraser, cited in. That is a lazy way to research. You are supposed to do your best to go to the main source. A few cited in is okay, but when cited in becomes too common, that is an issue. And now how old citations are is an issue. So if you are going to be providing citations, limit yourself to 2010 coming, unless you cannot find any citation except you go beyond 2010. So if you know how to use ChatGPT, instruct it to give you citations from 2010 coming. Please be mindful that what the chart will give you should be a guide. Rewrite what it is giving you. You can maintain the citations, you can maintain some of the sentences. Just make sure you rewrite it so that when you run your work in 10 it in, it does not capture it. Remember that when you have to correct your work after you have run 10 it in and it is more than 20%, you will suffer more. If you are not careful at that time, you just be deleting things and you will damage the entire work. So please, right from the word go, you have 15 days. Suffer. If you don't have to, if you have to reduce sleep, please reduce sleep. If you have assistants who will help you, don't let them do the work for you. If you contract out your work, you never know. You could easily be caught, because among those who graduated this year, I have caught somebody and I have blocked her certificate. Ideally, we should have cancelled her degree for her to start from year one afresh. I told her, as a compromise, I'm going to assume that you yourself did your learning. You wrote your own exam because we didn't catch you cheating in the exam hall, but this thesis you cheated. Therefore, you are going to start afresh, new topic, new objectives, new everything. When you are done and it is certified, then your certificate can be released. Please, don't allow yourself to be in that kind of situation. So if you look at this, the background continues, and then this is gaps in literature, because for PhD, problem statement is gaps in literature. For yours, it is problem statement or statement of the problem. It is under that you are going to identify the gaps in the supply chain literature. You also present the problems. Now, one thing I want to draw your attention to is that your background shouldn't conclude without introducing your study. So you see that in the last paragraph of the background for this one, look at this. You see the ability of the firm to respond to customer orders, that becomes greatly affected. It is a continuation. This study accordingly seeks to examine the extent to which religious orientation influence the performance of the supply chain, with a focus on the mediating effect of resource deployment capability and the moderating effect of sociocultural orientation within the context of a developing country. So now the study has been introduced into the background. You see that it is not a repeat of the exact topic the way it is framed. It is the use of auxiliary verbs, off, on, and those things to connect the different key topics. So this is how, so this is the topic: effect of religious orientation on supply chain performance, the roles of resource deployment capability, and sociocultural orientation. So if you come to the end of background, you will see that the study is introduced in the background. Now, if you come to problem statement, because this was a PhD, straight away you are supposed to identify gaps in the literature. But when you come to your problem statement, you can talk about the general issues with respect to the phenomenon you are studying. Don't tell me that supply chain practices contribute to the effective management of the movement of goods along a supply chain when you are talking about problem statements. Because over there, we expect to see problems. So rather than saying supply chain practice, you say an ineffective, or when supply chain management is ineffective, this becomes the effect. But don't tell me the positive things when you are presenting problem statement. No. Negate them, and then they become the reason. And do well to identify the gaps in the literature. This one, I can tell you, ChatGPT can tell you, if you ask it what is the state of, what are the gaps in this particular literature between 2010 and today, it will tell you. Then you use it to frame your work and let it flow in it. For this one, it was PhD, so it was straight to the gaps in the literature. So you see that the study identifies 3 major gaps. That's it. Don't leave your problem statement without identifying gaps, because otherwise your study will be irrelevant. For many of you, the direct relationship you are measuring has been established in the literature, and it is conclusive. Everybody, all the research you have found suggests that there's a positive relationship between supply chain management practices and supply chain efficiency. If that is established, say so. And then now, I explain why you think there's still a knowledge gap. It is either because a particular context has been ignored, or a particular geographical area has been ignored, or some new developments in the literature requires that other variables should be looked at. You often hear students say, and therefore I decided to introduce this. You are nobody. You can't introduce anything. Me, I'm nobody. I can't introduce anything in research. Research, when you are doing a study, you are joining a conversation. It is a discussion that is going on and you are joining it. The question is, what is your contribution to this ongoing debate? Sometimes it may look conclusive that, yes, everybody thinks there's a positive relationship. Yours can be, could there be a situation where this relationship could be negative? That will be your contribution. So you are looking at how can this be negative? And you'll be introducing a perspective that is knowledge gap. So for those of you who will find that most of the works are in the Western countries and not in developing countries, that becomes a contextual gap. So it means your study is dealing with a contextual gap, context, C-O-N-T-X-T-E-X-T, contextual gap. Some of you may find that, oh, a particular theory has been applied to a particular, to your variable. Almost all the papers you reviewed use that theory, but maybe in their use of the theory, they ignore certain factors. It means you are dealing with a theoretical gap. You may find that there are studies in the area, but the particular variables and the relationship between them, the way you want to espouse it, has not been fully looked at. That becomes an empirical gap. Empirical is research related. That becomes an empirical gap. So I've talked about knowledge gap, I've talked about theoretical gap, I've talked about empirical gap, I've talked about contextual gap. These are the common gaps in the literature that you may find. There are others. There are process gaps, there are conceptual gaps, the concepts. Some concepts are not studied or they are ignored. So all that are there, but the most common are the four I have told you about. Knowledge gap is number one, because as soon as you are looking at moderating, mediating, then chances are you are dealing with a knowledge gap, because then you are saying that that mediator or moderator you are introducing is going to help us better understand the relationship between the two main variables, the independent variable and the dependent variable. So usually you'll be addressing a knowledge gap. Sometimes you'll be addressing a knowledge gap and a contextual gap. Even though that relationship have not been looked at in that way, it has also been focused on a particular geographical region and not another. So you are dealing with knowledge and contextual gaps. You could also be dealing with knowledge and conceptual gap because a particular concept has been ignored. So you should be comfortable looking at the gap. Let it flow in your problem statements. Okay. At the end of the problem statements. So problem statement is supposed to be for many of you, if your background statement is 3 pages, don't let your problem statement also be 3 pages. No, it should be 2.5, 1.5. If your problem statement is too scanty, half a page, whoever is going to review your work will fail it in their mind before they even go ahead. So you can target 1.5 and a maximum 2 pages. Like I said, what you are looking at is PhD. Even for PhD, look at the problem statement, the gaps in the literature. If you put this half page, 3/4 page to this 1 page and this small thing, you will see that the entire problem statement is just like 1.5 pages. This is even for a PhD. And this is not a PhD that is yet to be submitted. This is a PhD that has been defended, and it has even been published. Parts of it have been published. So this is something you will want to take note of. So you see that at the end, the work is introduced in a way. So this study seeks to, among other things, fill this gap by not only examining. So don't just tell me your study is filling a gap and leave it there. How is it filling the gap? So you see that, by not only examining how and under what conditions religious orientation influences supply chain performance, but also how a firm's resource deployment capability mediates the effects of this American English. The laptop I'm using is American English, and the thesis is in British. So sometimes it will underline things not because they are wrong. Mediate the effect of religious orientation. So you see that the study has not been left out at all under the problem statement 2. Now, if you look at the format I sent to you, it has objective of the study, it has general objective and specific objectives. Please, I don't expect any subheadings. I don't expect. Present the objective like this. We have gone through the objectives. Caleb and Bona have been able to stand the pressure. I couldn't. And they have been able to help all of you with your objectives. So you have the main objective. So the principal objective of this study is to examine the effect of religious orientation. When we're doing this presentation, sometimes you just need to introduce a to, an and, an is to make it correct. And suddenly all of you, or let me not say all of you, most of you were behaving as if you don't understand English. I just couldn't stand it. So you have objectives of the study stated like this. I don't want, please don't present any statement. Don't say to be able to address this, the objective of this study, the following research questions were, no. Research questions, state the research questions, 1, 2, 3, bam. No statements. For PhD, it is not significance or justification of the study. It is contribution of the study. Yours is just, I think, justification or significance, one of them, I've forgotten which. Please do well to present your contribution of your justification of the study in at least 1 page. Don't let it be less than 1 page. At least. And then many of you do very poor at presenting paragraphs. Please note that a paragraph is a collection of sentences. So I don't want to see anybody presenting a 1-sentence paragraph. People present paragraphs that are in sentence, and then the paragraph must be clear. Where you get to a paragraph, nobody should struggle to know that it is a paragraph. You see, look at this. If you look at this, you can see clearly that this is a paragraph. Some of you will present your paragraph like this. This is not a paragraph. The paragraph must be clear. It must be clear. So please, when you are presenting your paragraphs, let it be clear. It is only under the justification or significance of the study. Don't use both. Look at what I sent to you and use what is there. It is only that section that can have future tense using will, would. No other section should have that. Please take note of that. So now, the way I want you to present this justification of the study is to use the first paragraph to talk about those who will benefit from the study. So you say that the findings of this study will be relevant to maybe policymakers, researchers, whatever. Anybody that you think the study will be relevant to, please see it there. Look at the way this was started. The study is in the field of behavioral supply chain management. If you can identify yours, do so. If you can't, no. But this is a study that is complete. So the use of the study is what we call the simple present tense. You can present your entire work in the simple present tense, or you present it in the past tense. In that case, it will have been the study was. So the first paragraph should introduce the field and who will benefit from the study. And then, remember, this is a PhD, so it's contribution of the study and not justification. So each presentation is different. But you see, this first paragraph talks about one contribution. The second paragraph talks about another contribution, and the third paragraph talks about another contribution. So if you think that your study is going to be relevant to just two groups of people, researchers and supply chain managers, excellent. Use one paragraph to explain how your study will be relevant to researchers, and how your study, the second paragraph, to explain how your study will be relevant to supply chain managers. Don't let it look like it will be relevant to them because you have said so. No. Please don't do that. It should be relevant to them because of so and so and so. So if you look at this is contribution, like I told you. The major contribution of this is that it has been able to demonstrate that, remember, it has been able to suggest that the work is complete. It has been able to demonstrate that the nexus between religious orientation and supply chain performance is a function of the mediating effect of resource deployment capabilities and the moderating effect of sociocultural orientation. So that is a major contribution. This is how you present your significance of the study. If you are saying it is going to be beneficial to researchers, the question is how. So this is where you are going to draw on the fact that research has pointed to the fact that the relationship between supply chain practice and supply chain efficiency is positive. This positive relationship is based on the fact that people have looked at this issue from the Western countries' point of view. Issues relating to developing countries, such as bad roads, unavailability of large warehouses for hiring, poor maintenance of trucks and haulage vehicles, coupled with the inefficiencies in local governance, contribute to a different outcome than what the literature is trying to establish. You see, when you say it like that, then you are letting the reader realize that, yes, you acknowledge that work has been done in that area, but you are believing that researchers will benefit from your work because your work is able to now bring that context that is missing. And you are outlining some of the reasons that make the context relevant to take note of. Because there are some people today, if you tell them that a country has bad roads, they will think you are crazy, because they have lived in an environment where every road is tarred and no pothole can develop on a road. The city officials will not allow potholes. As soon as a pothole is developed, that part of the road is scraped off and a new one is laid. So when you tell them a country has potholes, they will be amazed. But we know, in fact, there was a paper that was supposed to be published by one of the professors of KNUST, and he was talking about transport friction. And transport friction looks at all the factors on the road that inhibit free flow. And he talked about markets on highways. And the general wrote to him that such lies cannot find space in any meaningful journal. He snapped the markets and sent it to them, and the editor said, "This is arranged." They cannot just bring their mind to understand that there can be a market on a highway. A Jisu is enough to let everybody know that there can be a market on a highway, and that market can create between 20 to 45 minutes traffic. Okay. So we come to research. In fact, yours has now changed to summary of methodology. It's a new requirement from graduate school, summary of methodology. There are specific things you are expected to mention here. The design, the strategy, the approach, and then the population, the sample size, and the analysis. So you see that he says this study adopts the explanatory research design. Adopts is simple present tense. So there's consistency. You can see consistency. If I had used past tense, it would have been expected that it would be the study adopted the explanatory research design. There are three popular ones: explanatory, exploratory, and descriptive. People have added evaluative when you are evaluating something. So there's the evaluative research design. Now, when you talk about the research design, it should reflect the methodology. You cannot tell me that you are examining the relationship between two variables and tell me it is exploratory, and yet your approach is quantitative. You cannot also explore what is not new. So if you say this study adopted or adopts the exploratory design, I'll look at your topic again to see whether the topic is new, is something that has not been studied before. So you see, the study adopted the explanatory research design. Why? Because it seeks to examine. The research approach is deductive and it begins with hypothesis formulation. And it is quantitative. You don't have to bother yourself to say whether it's deductive or inductive, because your study, most of your studies are MSc. It does not get to the level of induction, or so your approach is either quantitative, qualitative, or a mixture of the two. Again, remember, this is a PhD. So what is required of it is more. So your significance of the study, one page, it can be more. It is one section that can be as many pages as you want, but for the purposes of being concise, please don't let your significance of the study go beyond 3 pages, and don't let it be less than 1 page. Summary of methodology, half a page to maximum 1 page. It should have no subheadings. So don't bring me subheading on research design, subheading on population of the study, subheading on sample size. No. That is not required here. You can present it in one paragraph as is done here, or in 2 paragraphs at most, unless it is going to 3 pages, 1 page. Please, summary of methodology should not go beyond 1 page. It shouldn't go beyond 1 page. If you look here, see that everything is there. Unit of analysis is there, sample size is there, data collection is there, data analysis is there. The sampling techniques are all there, but it is concise, half a page. Next is the scope of the study. This is where there is a lot of work, because some of you present what is called description of your topic rather than the scope. There are 3 minimum things you should present here. One is the geographical scope. In terms of geography, where is your study located? So you see that he say the focus of this study is on the influence of social and social. The unit of analysis is the firm in Ghana. So you see, he says, therefore, geographically, the study covers the whole of Ghana. Why? This, like I said, this is a PhD, but even for you, for MSc, don't just tell us the study is on manufacturing firms in Ashanti region or in Kumasi, and that is all. Why? Why are you concentrating on manufacturing firms in Kumasi? Is it because the manufacturing firms are able to, their characteristics enables them to represent the whole manufacturing sector of Ghana? Or you are limiting it because of financial issues, or because you have to give a reason? So you see that he says the coverage is that broad because Ghana has diverse religious and ethnic groups, with each having their own belief systems, though some significant similarities exist. You see, so though cities like Accra and Kumasi have clusters of these ethnic groups from whom data for the study could have been gathered, these groups may not adhere to the strict religious norms, because you go to the typical villages, the small towns, and some of the norms are held in high esteem than we those in Kumasi and Accra. Therefore, if you collect data among the Gumbes in Kumasi and Accra, you may not get that pure religious practice as may be the case in my hometown, Kumbungu. So that is that. So that's a justification for, so that's geographical scope. One of the things expected. So ideally, 1 paragraph for geographical scope. Then next is the conceptual scope. If you want, you can bring contextual scope. Context. Is it manufacturing sector, mining sector? Is it developing economy? That is the contextual scope. So you say contextually, this study is focused on the mining sector. Again, you have to defend why the mining sector. If you find that the write-up you can do there is small, you can add it to the geographical scope to make it 1 paragraph. Then a very important bit that if you don't do many times, me like this, your marks will be small. Me as supervisor, I'll give you very small, is the conceptual scope. So there are 3: geographical scope, contextual scope, and the conceptual, CONCEPTUAL. The conceptual scope is where you are providing the working definition of the key terms in your study. So religious orientation was one of the key terms in this study. And so you see that I say in terms of religious orientation, the focus is on only owner-managers' level of affiliation to their religion, their rate of attendance, the impact of the religion in their daily lives, and their level of adherence to the dictates of their religion and how that influences their decision making. So I have provided what is being looked at when we talk about religious orientation. So it is affiliation, it is attendance, it is impact, and it is adherence. Then we conclude by defining, so religious orientation is hence measured using the levels of affiliation and so on and so on. If you cannot be this elaborate, you can say that conceptually, this study looks at three variables, or the relationship between three variables, maybe digital transformation, technology adoption, and supply chain efficiency. Then you go ahead to say digital transformation is defined by this study to mean, or this study adopts the definition of digital transformation from so and so. Who states that? Then you state the definition. So that in the event that somebody says, but digital transformation is broad, why did you look at just this small, narrow bit? You say, please go to my scope. You will see my definition. So you wouldn't have finished scope until you have dealt with the geography, the context, and the concepts. So if you have two concepts in your study, they must both be defined. If you have three, they must all be defined. That is one paragraph. If you are giving them elaborate definitions, then each of them can be a paragraph, as in this case. So supply chain performance is measured based on BMON. So you see, I'm not just providing the meaning, I'm providing how I am measuring them. Fortunately for you, you have already presented your questionnaires. And for many of you, your questionnaires have been approved. So those of you whose questionnaires have been approved, you know how you are measuring your concepts, and that should flow in your scope. So supply chain performance is measured based on BMON's empirical study, and is measured based on two performance metrics: flexibility performance and delivery performance. So you see that even though the reference is to BMON, it was not only BMON who use flexibility performance to measure supply chain performance. You provide the others, because when you do, it becomes authoritative to suggest that it is not only one person who thinks supply chain should be. I chose not to use the word define. So flexibility performance is conceptualized. If you are conceptualizing, you are defining. If you are operationalizing, you are measuring. So if you don't want to use measure, define, you can say it is conceptualized as, and it is operationalized as. Scope of the study is very important, because if you do it well, the rest of the study takes its shape and you hardly run into any landmines. Many of you don't know what limitations of the study are. You hear people say, oh, in fact, the researcher was too busy with family, busy with studies. If you don't have time, you don't learn. That is not a limitation to the study. Limitation of the study is looking at first methodology. Are there any other methods that you could have used rather than the methods you use? What are the challenges with data collection? And for each limitation, you must show how you either limited the effect or toned it down, so that we don't say that your data is useless. So first, you see that this was a social science research, and yet we're using quantitative approach. there's been arguments that quantitative approaches do not fully give us the true picture for social science studies, and therefore social science studies should include qualitative analysis as well. Well, that is an opinion. So to deal with it, I said, nonetheless, the rigorous statistical analysis carried out to establish the validity and reliability of the data collected from the field indicate that the conclusions arrived at by the study are valid and generalizable. So the fact that no qualitative analysis was done does not lower the quality of the work that has been done. The next was the unit of analysis. So you see that here, I never mentioned time, that money, though it's allowed, because money, for example, is data collection. But don't come and tell me the researcher didn't have time. No, if you don't have time, you don't do a study. So you can fit the time in data collection. Data collection for this study, some of you will say data collection was limited to 120 people, and therefore the findings are not generalizable. Meanwhile, literature is telling you that if you have a sample size of 100, it is enough to do a valid and generalizable qualitative study. So straight away, whoever is reading your work knows you are lying. You don't even understand research, because the sample size above 100 cannot be, but you have in some cases non-returned questionnaires. Some respondents may not want to freely give out the data. For where there are non-responses, you have to carry out statistical analysis to take away the effect of non-response biases, and so on. You have to deal with all of that. Then finally, the heading of this section is organization of the thesis. Please don't bring me organization of the study, because all what we are doing now is part of the organization of the study, but it will not show up in your thesis. So yours is organization of the thesis. And for PhD, it's either 6 or 7 chapters. MPhil, MSc is 5 chapters. Don't say I'm doing MPhil, I want to present 6. No, you can't do that. It's 5 chapters. So this report is organized in 7 coherent chapters. The study is introduced. You see, I'm still using is. That is the simple present tense. And you see consistency. You see consistency in the presentation. Don't be using simple present tense somewhere, past tense somewhere, future tense somewhere. It suggests that you are not serious. So in chapter 2, pertinent literature pertaining to the is discussed. You see that some of you say chapter 1 presents, but chapter 1 is not a human being. How can it present anything? But we overlook it and allow it to go. But if you can avoid that, please do. If you look at the way I've introduced this, you try to avoid those things. Then I come here and I say chapter 5 presents the results. It should have been in chapter 5, the results are presented. That is the most appropriate way to present it. Okay, so that is chapter 1. Now, if you have any question, please use the reaction button to raise your hand. I'll enable you to speak so that we can use the 15 minutes left to address issues relating to chapter 1. You have a guide to writing chapter 1. I am sure as I was scrolling this, some of you have seen how this chapter 1 is written. I can cut it out and send it to you as a sample to guide your presentation. But bear in mind that this is for a PhD, not an MSc or MPhil. And therefore, yours may not be as detailed as this, but if you make it as detailed as this, you don't lose anything. It rather enhances your work. Okay, so the floor is open now. You can type your question in the chat if you so desire, or you can raise your hand and then I will enable you to talk. If there are no questions, that is great. It means you all have a hang of what I have said. I don't expect your works to come with errors that will drive me crazy, because I know I will not have time to read through the work you submit before assessment. You will get my comments, my detailed comments on your work after assessment. So I want to avoid a situation where you present anything that can fail your work. That is why I'm taking the pain to do this. Okay, since nobody has a question, let me use this opportunity to say that some of you cook your data. Just know that this time you cannot submit your work without the data. So even after you graduate, when we find out that your data is cooked, even after, there are some basic tests that you carry out and you can tell that a data has been cooked. If we find that your data has been cooked, even after you have taken your certificate can be withdrawn. So please don't give yourself that unpleasant experience. So collect the data correctly. If you are not sure about whether the sample size you intend to use is right, you can ask the question now. I will be happy to address it. And I don't expect any such else. Dennis, you and Nalikem, I don't know who raised the hand first. Let's hear Nalikem, and then Dennis, you can also come in. Nalikem, let's hear you. Hey, am I the only one who cannot hear? Hello, Nalikem. Caleb, can you hear her? Okay, Francis, let's hear you because I cannot hear Nalikem.
Hello, Doc. Good evening.
That's good evening.
Thank you very much for this presentation. I mean, it is going to guide us out in presenting our work. So, mine is just to understand the form of submitting our chapters to you for review. Is it going to be in chapters? Let's say once we've done how the structure of chapter 1 is looking like. Are we going to send them chapter by each chapter?
No, there will be no time for that.
Okay.
That's why I was saying that you follow the format and make sure your work conforms to the base. Normally, when we are hard pressed for time like this, my comments come after assessment.
Okay, sir.
So I give the detailed comments because for those who have graduated, some of them have not yet taken their certificate because I'm reviewing their work.
Okay,
But
sir.
the problem with DS is that for many of them, they ignored everything I have said. So it will take them a long time to get their certificate. But if all of us follow the rule, then you see that the review will just be about maybe put this here, change this from here. So it means that for chapter from the cover page to appendices, I will not read it until after the assessment.
Okay, Doc.
Yes.
Thank you very
So
much.
you're welcome. It is important that everybody takes these presentations very, very seriously. That's why I sent you samples. If you have any question, you call me when I am free. I pick calls a lot. Some of you call at times I cannot pick, but somebody would prefer to call me 4 times in a row at once. For me, that is counterproductive and useless. Because if you called at that time and I couldn't pick, 1, 2, if I don't pick it, you know I'm not in a position to pick. So you wait and call again another time. If you insist that you want to call me 4 times in a day, but you make sure you call me all at a go so that you can be able to show the whole world that you called me and I didn't pick. It's counterproductive. Okay. Nalikam, are you able to talk now? Because you are the only one whose hand is up.
Yes, good evening, Doc. I don't
Yes,
know
good
if you can
evening.
hear me now.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. My issue, the first is about the questionnaires.
Yes.
Those of us who are here to, in fact, we sent it one and then you asked us to do some reviews. And then for me, I sent it back expecting that we could get responses. But we want to know if we can still start something when now that we have taken us to the requirements of the chapter 1, can we still start something when our questionnaires are yet to be approved?
Oh, chapters 1 to 3 are independent of anything.
Okay.
Chapters 1 to 3 are independent of anything. So I expected everybody, I mentioned it on the page that chapters 1 to 3 don't depend on anything. So start putting something down. It is beyond chapter 3. 4 and 5 are dependent on the data you collect. So that one, you can't do it when you haven't had your questionnaires approved and you haven't collected data. That one, you can't do it. But as for 1 to 3, now I expect that many of you. Okay. Sorry, I hear somebody is crying. So, so that is that. And I saw comments, people saying they have sent their questionnaires, they are not. I'm sure many of you lose sight of the fact that I don't review, like life is not all about reviewing questionnaires. I have tons of things to do, tons and tons. So when I dedicate 1 hour to reviewing questionnaires, 1 hour to reviewing old theses, 1 hour to doing admissions, 1 hour to doing something, When it is at the end of 1 hour, I stop. That's why initially I mentioned how a questionnaire should look like. So when I was sending the first comments, I gave elaborate reasons. Only 2 people called me for further explanation on some of the comments I gave them. But the rest, you did the questionnaire and resubmit. In fact, there is somebody, I don't want to mention his name because I don't know how the person will feel. You send the comment, say 9 a.m. By 4 p.m., he has already sent a response. And then you open it. So I just send you a very skeletal, not approved. I don't bother to comment again because you have ignored all the comments I made and you are just submitting something so that you can say, oh, I submitted my work on the 12th of December. I submitted my, they all don't count. If you submitted your work and I sent you a comment, I expect you to take your time to review the comment and present your questionnaire in an acceptable way. Because some of you present, yes, you claim, in fact, some of you put these citations there, thinking that I will not verify. I do sampling. So I can decide to do every 10th person. I follow your citation to see whether what you are saying. Of course, some people may skip under the radar, but it will come back to roost someday. Because if you rely on a citation, it will come back to haunt you someday. You see, so it is not good that you rely on a citation, because if you do, it will come back to haunt you. So I expect that you take your time, because, for example, if you say our technology adoption enables us to improve our supply chain performance, that is a statement that is measuring effects. So if the respondent gives you a strongly agree, at the end of the day, you are going to report what the respondent has said. You haven't found anything. Technology adoption has its own structure. In our organization, we use maybe RFID to monitor transportation. We use tracking systems or cameras in our offices to look at efficiency of work. These are flat statements. Then when you go to supply chain efficiency, don't be using statement like our supply chain is efficient because we look out for this and this. Our supply chain is efficient because it means you don't even know what efficiency means. Efficiency has a definition. So you go to the definition of your efficiency and make statements out of it. The reason why you must take the questionnaire from literature is that you don't want to suffer to now have to validate. But it doesn't mean that when you see a statement in literature, whether it suits your situation or not, you just lift it like that. So you send me a questionnaire and you say the relationship between digital transformation and supply chain efficiency as the heading. I will send you a not approved straight without even looking at it. You have 2 variables. Digital transformation should have its own table and you should have its statements. But digital transformation may have sub-measures. You saw that in this work, chapter 1, I was showing you supply chain performance was measured using flexibility performance and delivery, financial performance and delivery performance. So these are the 2 sub-measures. So when you go to my questionnaire, the table that shows supply chain performance, you will see financial performance with its questions, minimum of 4. Then you see delivery performance with its own statement, also minimum of 4. What does everybody expect in delivery? It is either on time, the order is correct, there is no damage, and it arrived in the at the location that the customer requested it. So you carve statements around this, and you should be able to have statements that are flat, not statements that that are suggestive. So somebody sends me a questionnaire. I say, oh, you have used suggestive sentences. The person goes back to send even some that is worse. Yes. So when that happens, you see that your questionnaire will go through several rounds. Several rounds. You will submit it again and again and again. You see, so if you say, oh, I submitted my questionnaire since 1st December. Meanwhile, I have put on the platform that as at today, I am at 7th December, I am at 14th December, I am done with questionnaires up to 20th December. And you say I've submitted my questionnaire since 1st December, then that is an irrelevant comment. Because when I was talking about I am done with up to this date, I'm done with up to this date, where were you? And some of you too, I sent comments and you have not brought back your questionnaire. When you are submitting your works, I go back to the list of approved questionnaires. For anybody whose questionnaire I approve, I save the person's name. So I have the list of all the questionnaires I have approved. If I have not approved your questionnaire and you go ahead and collect data and everything, well, you will not submit the work with my name. You can submit the work in your own name, which is your right. It will not be in my name. Somebody says, please, how should the ending of the statement of the problem look like? Oh, I presented a sample. It has no format except that your study must show up in the problem statement. I showed you how the background can end, and I also showed you how the I also showed you how statement can end. I'll put a copy of it on the page. It's just that my WhatsApp is refusing to open on my laptop. So and somebody says you're all talking about you have not received your questionnaire. I think I have dealt with that. Okay. So if anybody has a comment that I've not responded to, please put up your hand. It's 9 o'clock. It's now 04. I promise that we will finish. So let me give you 2 days or 3 to do well to finish with chapter 1. On Friday, we will do chapter 2. If you have any questions with your chapter 1, you can ask it. If you are not clear with anything, you can ask, so that on Friday we'll do chapter 2, and on Sunday we will do chapter 3. Then I'm sure by then those who have submitted their questionnaire, that will meet the comment. I should have reviewed it. Dennis, you'll be the last person to ask the question tonight.
Sir, thank you very much. I wanted to find out, are you going to communicate the time as well to us for the meeting for Friday and Sunday, or we are going to use the same 7:45 p.m.?
No, I think that on Friday we should. I don't know if the 7:45 worked for people. Today we started at that time because we chapter 2, I don't know. I think 45 minutes can still allow us to present. So I don't know if the 7:45 worked for us today. I sometimes I just get worried about the married women because some people's husbands may need them. Otherwise, the 7:45 to 9 will have been good.
Okay.
Then, so if that works, we can, on Friday we can, but on Sunday, I think we can meet at 5. No, it will eat into the evening prayer. I think by 4:30, people will have closed from church, right?
Yes, please.
So we can do 4:30 to 6 because, Monday people will go to work.
Okay. So I think in the chat, I think there are about 3 of my colleagues who are saying they haven't received responses from their very first emails they sent for the questionnaire approval.
Oh, that one there, because I don't have any outstanding questionnaire. Jacqueline Honyo, is not true. I sent you a response. I sent you a response. Let me just check my email. I sent you a response to your questionnaire on the some of you, your questionnaires want to spam. I brought them to my email and I sent you a response. So Jacqueline Hoyo, I sent you a response on the 5th of December. So it cannot be right that I didn't send you a response. I sent everybody. You see, when I review, I don't skip. It was at the beginning that some went to my spam. And since I added those that went to spam to the list, I haven't had that challenge again. So cannot be. Who else is saying I didn't send them a response? Let me see. Isa Imoru, I sent you a response. Are you talking about another one or the very first one? For the very first one, it is not Isa, Rahina, to Jacqueline Honyo. You were about 8. Your own went to spam. And I brought all and dealt with them. So it can be that I didn't send you a response. I'm trying to look at the dates I sent you yours. Your own comes with your name in caps. So